think trust on energy efficient solutions, again, I think the challenge is, I think, in many of the industrial environments, I think this is not something which has taken priority. Because of that, the efficacy of that solution is not known or still being tested. So because of that, I think there's always an inhibition to embark on something new, especially in a very tough economic climate. I think the bigger issue is also the downtime issue, actually. It's not only, I think there are multiple issues with downtime. Number one is, I think, what if a particular improvement goes wrong, and then that results in a big downtime for the manufacturing facility itself, lost revenue opportunity, lost production. Number two is also, I think, is there enough downtime to even do the retrofits actually? So there are multiple issues with the downtime or the availability of peak periods when any of these initiatives can be taken and implemented. So that's been a bigger challenge for faster growth of the energy efficiency in the industrial sector. And also what we've seen is the procurement departments are typically aligned towards low-cost solutions, whereas energy efficiency typically may not be a low-cost solution, or it may need a higher capex. So these are again a conflict of interest within an organization in terms of where they should be heading. Should it be towards higher efficient solutions, or should it be more towards a cost optimization when it comes to procurement? So unless there is an alignment at a top level in terms of organization, I think energy efficiency will continue to suffer in an industrial scenario. So here we're looking at a few sectors which we thought are some of the highest consumers, and analyze the opportunities for that. If we just look at it here, the industrial sector accounts for about 34% of the electricity. This is only electricity, and here we're not looking at water or other sources of energy, just I think to give you a context here. So I'll explain this chart a bit. So what we are telling here is we are looking at three different scenarios. One is the business as usual scenario. Second is the policy trust scenario. And third is the policy and demand trust scenario. So I would say with the implementation of the Electricity Act, so we are probably somewhere in between BAU and the policy trust. Okay, there are two colored bars here. The one on the blue is actually the dollar savings potential by implementing some of these measures. The bar in red is actually the investment needed to achieve that savings. So this is for a 5-year period between 2011 and 2015, because the survey we did was last year, so that had a baseline of the previous year. So what we found is, if there is no change, or if the situation is what it was last year before the implementation of the Act, there would be a potential savings opportunity of about $161 million on an investment of about $397 million. Whereas in a policy trust scenario, the opportunity could go up to about $549 million in terms of the actual projects being implemented, with energy save to about $222 million. And the policy and demand trust, what it means is basically the companies taking more initiative to kind of elongate the policy in terms of, I think, making good of the opportunities available through the government schemes, and also having their own initiatives based on, say, assume that they appoint an energy manager, they're able to uncover new opportunities for energy improvement, so they go ahead and implement most of those diligently. I think then we're looking at a scenario of about $739 million of actual investment over a 5-year period, and energy savings potential of about $300 million. Still, I think for most of the industries we looked at, the payback period could be somewhere between 1.5 to 4 years. So here we're looking at some of the specific industries. So chemical industry, and what you see here, the numbers are most in terms of the investment or the opportunity for companies which are servicing and supplying equipment to those sectors. So we're looking at a range between 137 million and 250 million in the chemical industry as a potential opportunity to invest for energy efficiency kind of projects over a 5-year period. Within that, I think some of the focus areas include process heating and cooling, motor systems, and also heating, cooling, and lighting, the HVAC, I think, systems and lighting. Looking at the pharma and biotech, the opportunity ranges between 161 million and 278 million in terms of the investment potential. Again here the HVAC takes the bulk, whereas in the previous one it was more of process heating, whereas here it's the HVAC. Followed by some of the plug loads like centrifuges, incubators, dryers, and analysis equipment, followed by lighting. Look at the electronics industry. So we're looking at range between 89 million and 178 million. Again, I think the bulk of the opportunities in terms of the process tools, followed by, HVAC, followed by process tools, followed by facility. In the environment and water industry, we're looking at opportunity or potential investment between 89 and 178 million. So the big opportunity areas are pumping, wastewater treatment, and also the desalination markets. So some of the insights again which came out of our researchers, I think this is from an ESCO standpoint, the companies which service or which kind of offer services in the energy efficiency space. We found, I think, out of 17 ESCOs which are accredited, I think only 4 or 5 of them have a focus on the industry sector. Most of the rest are exclusively focused on the building sector. Primarily because I think downtime is less of a concern for the industry sector, and it's easy to project or demonstrate savings, and also it's less technically complex in nature, so obviously it's easy for them to hire people and implement it. And the other key insights, I think what we were able to uncover is actually, obviously there's a lesser proportion of projects getting converted from audit to implementation phase. Of course, there's a lot of projects which go through audit phase, but not all go through implementation. I think this could again be a big concern even in the new policy actually. Yes, you have energy managers, but then are they really going to move ahead to the next step in terms of really proactively embracing the new opportunities and need for conservation? And I think the bigger issue, primarily in the industrial space, is that I think confidence on the ESCOs or confidence on third-party service companies by the industrial customers. I think this is again inherently, I think, a big issue. Not only in Singapore, I think this is a concern globally when you talk about industry energy conservation. Because the industries themselves are quite knowledgeable and I think strong in terms of what they do. They are always suspicious of letting, or even kind of averse to letting third parties come and work on the plants. I think this is a big, I think, ongoing challenge with respect to the industry energy efficiency globally. And having said that, we've also seen several companies having their own in-house energy efficiency initiatives. And kind of the investments and opportunities we put here are predominantly for outsourcing purpose, which means that there is opportunity available for companies to go and do those kind of services. Because it's very difficult for us to measure or kind of do a complete survey of how much company spends in-house for these kind of measures. So I think we kind of excluded that from the market opportunity side. Okay, now we move on to quick regional perspective in terms of how the different Asia-Pacific countries are placed. I think in an Asian context, again here we are excluding India and China, so we're looking at ASEAN, Australia, and Northeast Asian countries. We find Japan and South Korea to be quite mature. Obviously, I think the primary reason is I think the cost of energy is so high, and also the level of industrialization in those countries. So they are quite well matured in terms of the market and the technology for energy efficiency. So this kind of gives you a comparison between the size of the economy and the size of the energy efficiency markets in these countries. So one I think unique thing what we saw is the South Korean market for energy efficiency is probably marginally bigger than the Japanese market in the kind of time period we analyzed. Most of the other markets probably followed a very predictable, I would say, proportion. Like within Southeast Asia, we found Thailand to be, I would say, the largest market, and awareness levels are also quite high in terms of the energy efficiency opportunities and specific projects there. followed by Singapore, followed by Malaysia, followed by Indonesia. Again, if you look at the difference between the potential for energy efficiency improvement in Indonesia and the actual market, it's too low. So the room for growth is quite high there. And many of these markets are growing 2-3 times the GDP. So I think that's another good news for the whole ESCO industry itself. I think many of the energy efficiency markets are growing 2 to 3 times the GDP growth of those countries. And again, I think we talk about the energy intensity by country and where they are with respect to the industrial GDP output. I think this is per GDP output in I think dollars for 2005, I think. So you see, Singapore is alongside, I would say, countries like Germany or Japan in terms of the energy intensity. And they have a plan to reduce energy intensity by about 20% by 2020 and 35% by 2030 from 2005 levels actually. Whereas if you look at Vietnam, I think they're quite high at the ratio of about 0.3 versus Singapore's ratio, I think, about 0.1 per GDP. So, but they are 3 times, I would say, inefficient in that standpoint on a per GDP basis. And the several countries have their own energy efficiency targets, which is part of the national energy plans. A quick snapshot of the policies across the region, in this minus Singapore. Again, by far we see Malaysia to be having, I think, quite an active program of late in terms of promoting energy efficient products, both in terms of the consumer, buildings, and also industries. Whereas Thailand, I would say, is definitely more advanced than Malaysia in that aspect. And they've been having these initiatives for the last decade or so at least. And many of these countries, I think, score big in terms of both Thailand and Malaysia in terms of the feed-in tariff scheme for their solar and other renewable technologies. Okay, just to quickly summarize what we've seen so far. I think, even though, like I said, funding is probably not an issue in Singapore, but from a regional perspective, I think still banks are very averse to lending for energy efficiency projects, possibly because I think lack of awareness on part of the banks, lack of education, and also I think lack of confidence in the industry that delivers it. So I think that's still a big concern across the region and in most parts of the world. And the government mandates are necessary to kind of kickstart the whole, say, program, but that's not something which will guarantee long-term success. So obviously the industries and the ecosystem has to play a strong role in terms of sustaining the momentum of that particular industry. Customers prefer ESCOs because of the proposal guarantee offered, but then again, this is being more successful in the building sector rather than on the industrial sector, at least so far. And we are seeing Korea and Japan fairly mature in terms of the ESCO markets. I think big stumbling block, I would say, in terms of the EE in many of the emerging developing countries is the energy subsidies and low cost of energy. Obviously, when you have something for lower than the cost of production, obviously, I think there's tendency to waste and really, I think, less need for conserving. So I think the artificial altering of the market is a big issue there with respect to energy efficiency market growth. That kind of brings to the end of the presentation.
Thanks, Ravi, for the informative presentation. We will now open the floor for questions. Some house rules. First, please introduce yourself and organization before asking questions. And secondly, please keep your questions short. Try to. And anyone from room 1? Yeah, we see room 2 on the screen already. Yes.
My name is Dr. very interesting presentation, a lot of data, information. And from the Educational Institute point of view, I would like to know, are there any projections on the manpower requirement for implementing those energy efficiency measures? What do you understand that there are many times not qualified people available, and there is a lot of cutthroat competitions amongst the schools to grab specifically the SCE you mentioned about it. We would appreciate some, if you have some information to share with us. Thank you.
Okay, I think we don't have a specific number in terms of the manpower projections, but what we do know is there are certain ESCOs who themselves have spun off a training division so that they can train industry people on energy audits and related activities. So at least I know of 2 or 3 ESCOs who are having a commercial training division so that they can acquire new talent and probably use for their own purpose, and also probably I think they'll be hired by other people. So, but we don't have a specific projection in terms of how many people will be required in 3-5 years time. We don't have that number.
Then we can assist you.
Sure. Definitely, yeah.
Second question. What about room 2? Anybody from room 2?